Hi, you're probably not used to seeing me on camera here. This is not a normal kind of video that I make, but I want to get more comfortable with being on camera and going off the cuff, so this is unscripted. I didn't write a script for this. I also wanted to be on camera to make this more personable. I wanted you all to know that I'm being sincere and very straightforward. This is not me trying to be funny or quirky or even be clickbaity. The Acolyte is such a sensitive topic in the fandom, and I want to give my thoughts, but I know that there will always be people who will respond in bad faith. And that is even more of a problem following the third episode of The Acolyte. I wanted to make this video following the third episode because the third episode was the third episode. I don't know what else to say. The third episode of The Acolyte was the one that everyone said was going to ruin Star Wars, and after I watched it, I thought, okay, I have to talk about this. But I don't know, I have a life, and I got busy, and I didn't have time to make that kind of video, so the fourth episode came out last night, I watched it, and now I'm here to talk about all of it, I guess. For those of you who did not watch my first video on the premiere, my overall thoughts were pretty much, it's just a TV show. I don't have any strong feelings about it one way or the other. But episode 3 of The Acolyte is the one that everyone said was going to ruin Star Wars. And episode 4 is the halfway point, so now we have seen everything that critics have seen. I want to start with my thoughts on episode 3 of The Acolyte. And it's going to be controversial, probably. I'm sure most of you all will not agree with me, and that's okay. I guess I'll just start by saying that I didn't like the episode. I did not think it was very good. I didn't enjoy watching it. But that being said, I truly believe that it will be the one episode that we all look back on very differently in the end. Everyone is so divided over this, and I don't even know if it's really manufactured, if it's very genuine, but there is division, clearly. There are a noticeable number of people who genuinely believe that this episode ruined Star Wars. Even though, again, I don't like the episode, I just don't really agree. The main thing I've seen people say that it ruined is Anakin's importance and his legacy, because he's not the first person born of the Force. But before I can address that, I got to address the big gay elephant in the room, and that is, of course, the lesbian witches in the episode. The people who believe that this episode ruined Anakin's legacy and that it has ruined Star Wars and betrayed George Lucas's vision and it's ruined the prequels, they're sort of in two different camps. Sometimes they kind of overlap. There are people who are upset by this because it involves people creating life with the Force. And there are people who are upset that it involves people creating life with the Force, but those people are lesbians. And again, sometimes they intersect, they overlap, but that's not always the case. If you're someone who watched episode 3 of The Acolyte and your first reaction was to run to Twitter and start tweeting about lesbian scissoring, I'm sorry, but you're not funny, and I don't really think that you're engaging in good faith. But for most people, or at least I would hope most people, don't really care or aren't bothered that this involves two women. The issue is that it involves creating life with the Force. Now this, in and of itself, I don't really think ruins anything with the prequels. I think there's a distinction that has to be made and that sometimes people overlook. There is a difference between breaking the lore and expanding the lore. But you can also expand and break the lore at the same time, like the introduction of the Sith Eternal in the Final Order in The Rise of Skywalker. I think that expands the lore a lot, but I think it also just shatters it. It's very stupid. And The Acolyte may very well be stupid and shatter the lore, but my problem is that the show is not over. There are still 4 episodes left. We're only halfway through the season. And if I'm being honest, I'm really struggling to hate this show. It is goofy as shit. It is dumb for most of it, but Star Wars in general is really dumb. If you take anyone who has never seen Star Wars and just try to put on any random movie and try to explain to them what certain stuff is and what this little guy does and what that means, they're gonna kill themselves. Star Wars, for the most part, is stupid. There are like an infinite number of things in Star Wars that fans of Star Wars think are stupid. So imagine what people who aren't fans and know nothing about Star Wars think about generally all of it. It's just stupid, but that's not an excuse for bad storytelling. And again, I don't think that The Acolyte can be judged for that yet because the show is not over. But for what there is right now, I've already talked about it in my first video, yeah, it's pretty rocky. But back to the issue with Immaculate Conception. If the problem you have with this is that it involves two women creating life with the Force, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, get over it. If you think of this scenario as two women created life with the Force, I'm not gonna sit here and say, you're homophobic or you're reactionary and you're closed-minded and you're dumb, because I think that that premise is just inherently flawed. With just what we're told in that episode, 2 women did not create life with the Force. It was one woman who did something with their own interpretation of the Force. We don't know what exactly happened, and I'm sure it's being kept intentionally vague, but again, we don't have all the answers, and that was intentional. That's the intention for, like, the entire episode. Episode 3 of The Acolyte is not very good because it feels incomplete, like something is missing here, but that is the case. Like, that's true. That something is missing. We don't have the entire story. I'm not going to sit here and say that I have all the answers and everyone else is dumb and isn't picking up on this stuff, because other people are picking up on this, but I have seen a lot of people who just don't seem to acknowledge this stuff, and it's either because they're engaging in bad faith or they just don't care. Either way, I honestly can't blame them. Like, a lot of this is caused by disenfranchisement of the franchise. Franchise disenfranchisement? I don't know, something like that. Like, I can't expect you to want to engage in good faith with a show like this after all of the mud you've been dragged through. I get it. But The Acolyte, again, I don't really like it, but I'm really struggling to hate it. And episode 3, again, I didn't like it, but it made me feel something that other shows as of late haven't made me feel. Instead of running to Twitter to talk about how it ruined Star Wars and how much I hated it, I actually felt like engaging with fan theories for the first time in, like, forever. And that is because the episode is incomplete, because we clearly do not have all the answers. You can say that it's dumb and breaks canon, but again, we don't have all the answers, and when the show is over, we can judge it by then, and I'll be on your side if it does break canon. But even if we're just engaging with what we assume they're gonna do or where they're headed toward, I don't really think that it ruins anything like Anakin's legacy, because that kind of already happened in, like, December of 2019. Were you guys not in the theater? Because I was. I remember it, and I fucking hated it. I'm kind of baffled by the number of people who are saying that this episode is what ruined Anakin's legacy, and people seem to forget that The Rise of Skywalker exists. Like, if anything ruined his legacy, it's that. It's the end result. This is just my opinion, but I think what matters the most in terms of Anakin's legacy, excluding all the, murder of millions or trillions of people that came along with it, is how his legacy ended, what the conclusion was. And I think that conclusion was ruined by The Rise of Skywalker. In terms of how it began, I mean, I don't know. It didn't really go where I thought it was going to go in the end, so when it comes to how it starts, I'm kind of struggling to care. But in terms of what this episode did show us and what it didn't show us, I don't understand why... No, okay, that's a lie. I do understand. When it comes to episode 3 and the story and the structure and the pacing and what we're shown, and especially the ending, part of me wants to say that I don't understand why people are saying the things that they're saying about it, and why they're kind of giving the analysis that they are, and why they're coming from the angle that they are, but, like, I do know. I do get it. It's because at face value it's stupid, but we're not meant to take it at face value. You're supposed to look deeper. And I get it that it feels like The Acolyte has nothing deeper there, but I want to believe that there is. And with the 3rd episode, I know for a fact that there is, because if you go back and rewatch it, there clearly is stuff missing. If you go back to the very end of the episode when Osha wakes up on the ship, Torben walks into view of the camera, but he's out of focus. And if you zoom in, his face is, like, like, he's all scarred up, like we see him in the present day when he dies. There is footage from the trailers of Kelnaka fighting Soul, and Kelnaka pushing Torben up against the wall and, like, choking him, I guess. And Torben's face is, like, freshly bloodied and scarred. Something happened that we didn't see. I think Osha's conversation with Mother Anastasia really puts into perspective just how much she's willing to change and how much she's willing to give in. And this plays into, I think, a dynamic that people are overlooking, which is Mother Coral and Mother Anastasia. Mother Coral is clearly not pleased with how Mother Anastasia has been raising the twins, so when Mother Anastasia tells May to go for a walk with Mother Coral, we're just left with Mother Anastasia and Osha to talk about Osha's decision. But what we don't see, and I believe deliberately, is Mother Coral on that walk with May. Because in the next scene, May is back and she is suddenly flipping on a dime, wanting to kill her sister. Like, it just comes out of nowhere. And I know it seems stupid, but clearly something is missing that we didn't see. It's also worth pointing out that Mother Coral's body is not among the witches, which is interesting to me. Since we see everything from Osha's perspective, we're led to believe that May started this fire and it engulfed the entire coven and it killed everyone, but obviously that's not the case. And I say obviously as in it's obvious to me, but it clearly is not obvious to everyone, because A lot of people just think the fire killed everyone, and they're like, oh, how did this fire just engulf an entire coven that is built of stone and rock? How did that happen? The writers are stupid. There's nothing more to say here. These people are just dumb. But like, have you considered that maybe you are? Like, I thought the same thing too. I thought, wow, that is pretty stupid. But then I went back to rewatch it, and I noticed some things, like when May is about to set the book on fire, the light sort of illuminates half of her face, and there is what is left over of a teardrop, like a single teardrop on her cheek. And I don't think that is an accident. I think that is very much intentional. Again, I have no idea what happened or what was said, but I think that something happened on her walk with Mother Coral, and that she was then pushed to try to kill her sister. Previously, Mother Coral had expressed that she expected more from Osha, and so I think Mother Coral knew that Osha was going to say, yes, I want to be a Jedi, and that she told May, look, I mean, like, she's going to betray us, I mean, you have to kill her. Then you also have to consider the fact that we did not see May start the fire. Yeah, she lit the book on fire, but then we cut away, and the book's on the floor, and May's not there. There's so much stuff that we didn't see, and even more than that, we're led to believe that the fire then spread and led to the reactor explosion or whatever that was. Even before I rewatched the episode and I noticed all this other stuff, just on my first watch, my initial viewing, when that reactor exploded, I knew for a fact that had nothing to do with the fire. We're meant to believe that it did, but I think it's very obvious that it had nothing to do with it. And right before it blows up, we hear a bunch of screams at once, and then boom, just silence. And then when goes awry, Sol is right there to save the day. How did that happen? Well, it's because the Jedi were upstairs talking to the witches, and this is just my tinfoil hat theory time, but I am 100% confident that the Jedi killed all of the witches. The soon-to-be victims of genocide did a little genocide of their own, and it's just kind of ironic or poetic irony, I have no idea. Given the leftover trailer footage and then seeing episode 4 and the witch's logo or their little symbol in Kelnaka's hut, something happens with Kelnaka, and I am pretty confident that it will also involve Torben heavily. As you'll recall, Torben was possessed by the witches, and I'm not sure if maybe he saw something or learned something that he shouldn't have seen while the witches, were like possessing his mind or something. Or maybe it just made him speed run Anakin's Ark and Attack of the Clones and he decided, okay, everyone here has to die. But there is obviously something happened that would make Torben want to put himself into exile and cut himself off from everyone and everything but the Force itself. Torben told May, like, forgive me, we thought we were doing the right thing. Okay, who's we? Because the only person that we saw save anyone was Sol, and you might think that what Sol tried to forgive himself for was the fact that he couldn't save May, but that's obviously not it either. The Jedi were all there, and they killed everyone, maybe except for Kelnaka. And we see again in episode 4 that they mention that Kelnaka has been posted on Kafar, or whatever the planet is called, since that incident, I guess. I don't really know if that is actually accurate, if that's like an accurate retelling of it or not, but I highly suspect that whatever happens, when the Jedi kill everyone, there will be a huge cover-up involved. Like, they're not going to go to the High Council and tell them, yeah, we just killed all of these witches, everyone is dead. We, the Jedi, just slaughtered an entire coven of women. That's not going to happen. These people are the protectors of peace or whatever the hell. And when that happens, I know it's going to piss off a lot of people, but I mean, I kind of like the dynamic and what they did with the Coven and the Jedi when the Jedi showed up to talk to the kids. And, the Coven's like, oh, they're trying to take our kids away from us. And Sol is like, no, we don't take kids. But from the Coven's perspective and from most people's perspective, this is like a hostage situation. If you're someone who really likes to watch Critical Drinker and other related channels, you probably think that, all of this is about pushing an agenda where the Jedi represent, cisgender, white supremacy, power. I don't know, what the hell. Clearly it's not. I think, though, that it is a very interesting depiction of the Jedi at this time because this is probably how a lot of people view the Jedi. We're only 100 years away from when the Jedi's downfall starts to pick up pace and really get to the point, so I think it makes perfect sense that there are more and more people out there who are growing, dissatisfied or discontent. Discontent is growing among people about the Jedi. I think it's actually interesting to show that kind of perspective of people who don't view the Jedi as keepers of peace. And I guess the thing that people would say is proof of Leslie Headland pushing some liberal feminist agenda is the way that the Coven views the Force as the thread. And I think that's just I think that's just bullshit. I don't buy into that, like, at all. I think it is interesting to see a depiction of a group of people who aren't the Jedi, who do use the Force, who don't even call it the Force. Like, yes, this is a narrative critique about power structures, with the Jedi being the power structure in question, and I think it is interesting to have a group of people who are questioning, why is it that the Jedi have dominant power over the Force? Why are they the ones who get to dictate who does and does not use the Force, or who can and can't use the Force? Like, they show up and their whole thing is like, hey, we believe that you're training kids to use the Force. You can't do that. That's our thing. That's their story, at least when they show up, but I highly suspect that in future episodes, when we learn what actually happened, like when the fire happened, we're gonna see why they were really there, and my suspicion is that it wasn't just because of kids. My guess is they actually didn't even know about the kids, they just discovered them upon investigating. But my assumption is that they got there, and they started their investigation, they got there in the first place, because they knew or heard of the existence of this coven of witches who were using the Force in a way that the Jedi did not agree with, did not like, and ruled as being not allowed. And with that, I think that learning there were people who were conceived of or by the Force or somehow, and again, we have no idea how the twins were made, and I'm sure that this will play into how Darth Plagueis learned how to create life somehow. I'm sure it will. I won't call it stupid or dumb until we see it actually play out, until we have all the answers. Until then, I'm just gonna go with what we have. But again, that's the whole point I'm trying to say here, is that the Acolyte, even though I don't really like it right now, and I think a lot of it is really stupid, and the whole thing is just kind of goofy, even though Star Wars in general is goofy, it's making me have these questions. It's making me want to engage with these theories and question what exactly is happening, and what are we being shown, and I actually look forward to seeing the next week's episode. And part of that, though, is to see if the remaining episodes get worse, if they are bad, and if by the end of week 8, if I will get to make a video where I just completely trash the show from start to finish. Trust me, I enjoy doing that. I made an hour-and-a-half long video on Madam Web, just ripping it to shreds from start to finish. Literally, the entire movie, the entire runtime, start to finish, just ripped it to shreds. An hour-and-a-half long, and almost nobody saw that video. But I really like making that video, so I get it. It's really fun to make fun of something that deserves to be made fun of and ripped to shreds. But the Acolyte is not over, and so I don't really want to engage with that right now. But I think it's interesting that even as a show that I don't really care for, that I don't really like right now, it is making me want to have these other discussions about what else are we going to see? What else does this show have in store? Because shows like Ahsoka or Obi-Wan didn't make me have these kinds of questions. So it's just interesting. I don't know. I want to wrap up my point about the Jedi. I know that revelation that they killed all of the witches, it'll piss off a lot of people, and they're going to say that Leslie Headland has ruined the Jedi and she's made them evil because she's a bitter feminist SJW or whatever. I don't know. But like, beyond the fact that I don't agree with those kinds of people, I just think that kind of analysis is stupid. Like, it's just wrong, because she wouldn't be ruining the Jedi. The prequels ruined the Jedi. The prequels made them arrogant idiots, assholes. They suck. So I don't think that Jedi beginning to suck in the Acolyte really does anything. Again, it goes back to breaking the lore versus expanding the lore. Like, expanding the scope of how much of an asshole these people are isn't really breaking the lore or making it worse if it's just showing us more how they got to be bigger and bigger assholes, if that makes sense. And the Jedi doing terrible things, again, it shouldn't be like the end-all be-all for how we decide if the Jedi are good or not. And I don't think that's even what Leslie Headland is even trying to do with the show. Some people are going to see this as a terrible metaphor, but I'm going to use it anyway. Christianity. I think that a lot of what Christianity teaches, like the Bible, and things that Christians have done, like, I don't know, the Crusades, like all the people that have been killed in the name of Christianity, I think that's pretty abhorrent. I think it sucks and it's not very good, but that doesn't define you as a Christian. You can be a good person and you can be a good Christian, even if, people have done terrible things as Christians and for Christianity or in the name of Christianity. So just because there were Jedi out there who slaughtered an entire coven of lesbian witches doesn't mean that Luke Skywalker is not a good person. Just because he's like, no, the Jedi are not dead. They're not gone. I'm like my father before me. I'm a Jedi and I'm a good person because this is the hero's journey, and I'm the hero, and this is my journey, and this is very simplistic storytelling, and it's the 1980s, and yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Before I go, I want to check in on the whole masked Sith Lord thing. We all agree that I'm right? Like, I'm not the only one who's ever said this, but I mean, I'm on the record saying in my last video that the masked Sith Lord is very obviously Khmer. I mean, we all agree that I'm right, that is Khmer, right? Like, there is no world in which that is not Khmer underneath that mask. I actually thought that it would be... I thought it was really funny in episode 4 when Khmer and May first arrive on Kofar and Khmer is getting his things together and he has that bag with him. I was like, that bag is oddly helmet-shaped. And then when he was putting it down, and then especially when he got, like, tied up by May, I was expecting May to go grab his bag and like ruffle through it and pull out the helmet or like the mask. Obviously that didn't happen, but I thought it'd be really funny, and I think it's just kind of funny to think about Khmer running around with that helmet, the lightsaber, and the cloak and everything in his bag. And yeah, obviously it's Khmer. I think we're gonna see that probably in the next episode. If not then, episode 6 maybe. These episode runtimes are way too short, I gotta say. I just started and finished binge watching Russian Doll on Netflix, which is Leslie Headland's first show. And those episodes are like the 22, 23, 25-minute episode runtimes. And the show is pretty good. But those runtimes definitely fit that kind of storytelling much better than I think a Star Wars show that it can fit to Star Wars, I guess. I don't know. There's so much I could say and critique about the pacing and the humor and the dialogue and just the directing and the set building and the costumes and everything like that, but I've already criticized some of it in my first video, and I want to save the rest of it for the last one. Whatever it is, whenever it is that it comes out, about the entire show when the show is over. So, I don't even know what I'm doing with this, honestly. I just kind of want to talk about the Acolyte now, and I don't know, I need to get more comfortable with being on camera, and I want this to be more personable so you guys know that I'm being as honest and straightforward with you as possible, because, like, I'm being serious when I say this. I'm not a shill. I know some people think that, but I'm not. I'm not being paid to say this. This is just my honest opinion. I really don't care for the Acolyte. I don't really like it, but at the same time, I'm really struggling to hate it. I'm really struggling to tell myself that this is the worst thing in the world. I don't think it is. I think Ahsoka is worse. I think Obi-Wan and Boba Fett are infinitely worse. This is nowhere near Andor. I can say that much for sure. This is definitely not an Andor level series. But I think it would be really interesting if, and I don't even know if this would be a good thing, because this would just kind of make for like tonal whiplash. But now we've seen every episode that critics have. They saw the first 4, and we have 5, 6, 7, 8 left. It would be interesting, I think, if the show just completely did a 180 on its tone, and like all the Jedi, including Soul, just died in episode 5 or 6. And we're just left with the villains. I think that would be pretty interesting, but I don't know if it'd be very good. My camera also just randomly turned off while I was recording that last part, so I have no idea what you heard or didn't hear. So yeah, I don't know if this will even be a video that you end up seeing that I actually put together and make into a video to put out there, or if it is, if it will then even stay up. But yeah, this is not the kind of video that I normally make, but it's just one that I wanted to get out there to just tell you guys about. I don't know where I'm going with this, and I guess the same can be said for the Acolyte, because I'm the same as you guys. I have no idea where this is going from here on out. None of us know except the people who made it. Critics don't know because they didn't see these next 4 episodes. So, I don't know. We'll see when it ends.